Guys, how you guys doing today? Thank you for joining me today on Rewired the show. My name is Garrett O'Brien, your host. This show today is going to be talking about abuse, talking about people who use certain things to get what they want out of a relationship and how to identify them and hopefully protect yourself against the potential abuser. Um, this one's kind of important to me as well because my first relationship I was in, my first marriage, I didn't know that I was being abused. And being a man in a relationship where you have an abusive wife, it's really embarrassing for the man to admit that he's being abused by a woman. It's just the social stigma that it gets put on there that usually the abuser is the man, but that's not true. Women can be abusers too, and it's just it all depends on the relationship you're in. Um, there's multiple types of abuse that happen in a relationship to where it puts you to a point that you are isolating, you are shutting yourself off, you are hiding from others, you're embarrassed because you don't want your relationship to be the one to fail. But it's a common occurrence every day that relationships fail because someone's not willing to admit that something is happening, or they're not really willing to come forward with whatever it is that they're going through in the relationship. And I'm not saying involve friends in your marriages. I'm not saying involve family in your marriages, because a marriage is between a husband and a wife. It's a covenant with God that you go into, that it's between you, your spouse, and God. And how you treat your spouse can determine whether your relationship or your marriage can either flourish or die. And the first one I want to talk about is physical abuse. Now, physical abuse is exactly what it is. It's any unwanted touching, whether it's playful or not. It can be grabbing of clothing, just as simple as grabbing the clothing, an act of someone putting their hands on you in a non-consensual way. Even someone throwing something at you is abuse. Like some of the stuff you see, it some of the stuff you see in the streets these days is considered physical abuse. Whether it's throwing stuff at somebody else's car, or throwing stuff at somebody, or even just shoving somebody. I mean, that's considered physical abuse. And when you're in a relationship and that type of abuse happens, you need to be very careful. The reason why is because that person, it's like a gateway in a way. It starts with a gentle shove, or an argument where they start charging you, or something like that. You got to be very careful when it comes to stuff like that. And it's just it's just how it works sometimes. I mean, you gotta really look into what is going on in your relationship to warrant, not really warrant because you're a victim of physical abuse, but more along the lines of, what can I do to maybe alleviate the physical abuse? How can I respond to an argument, or how can I respond to somebody in the street that is coming at me in a way that's aggressive? And like I said, I'm not putting physical abuse on the victim at all. It's what I'm talking about is how to sort of get away from the abuse before it happens. Another one that commonly happens that people don't really look at, and not really aware of, is emotional and verbal abuse. Emotional abuse, it, it it's really hard because there's a lot that goes into emotional abuse. verbal abuse, it falls in with emotional abuse, and that's name calling, just name calling. Like I said, it's really hard to get into. But I can tell you from a personal experience, the name calling has completely destroyed me in a way. Like they say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt. That's a lie. Words do hurt, and especially if you have a words of affirmation love language, that could be. I mean, that could be one of the things that completely sets you down to a point of depression where you just want to hide and just go away. Um, Verbal abuse may not cause physical damage, but it does cause emotional pain and scarring. And with that emotional pain and scarring comes PTSD. And when you have a long periods of verbal or emotional abuse, it can make you start to believe what they're actually telling you. And it's very debilitating when you have somebody talking to you in a manner that's very abusive, that you're sitting there and you're trying to listen to what they're saying, but what you feel is you feel like you're being attacked. You feel like you're not good enough. You feel like you're the problem and not them. And that's what that's going to lead me into my next thing under emotional abuse, which is narcissism. Narcissism is becoming more common within male and females in the relationship. Narcissism is basically no empathy, no remorse. They feel entitled. They're deceptive. It's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde. They're very emotionally dependent, and in some cases they use battering to control. Battering's not really, battering is not necessarily physical. I'm going to talk about battering later on this evening, but battering can happen for a way to control their partner or their spouse. Narcissists, they don't feel bad what they're doing because they feel that they're always right. They feel that what they're saying is the truth, and any other version of the truth is a lie. With being a narcissist, that's a personality disorder. It's something that cannot be healed, but it can be managed if the person is willing to come forward and get the help. But 9 times out of 10, a narcissist doesn't look at the fact that they're the problem. They look at everything else as the problem. They don't have the ability to authentically embrace, the world of another person, unless it's for selfish gain. What can they get out of it? What can they do to be on top? What can they do to control the whole situation? That's typically what a narcissist, that's typically what a narcissist does, is they try to get control of the whole situation. Narcissists typically twist facts. They will tell you whatever you want to believe, or whatever they believe you need to know, in order to get what they're attempting, to get information from you, whatever they're attempting to extract from you. And like I was saying, a little bit ago, everyone's truth is not the truth in their eyes. Everything that is outside of them is a lie. So basically, a lie is not a lie to them. Their version of the truth is, in their mind, the truth overall. But 9 times out of 10, it's not the truth. It's a misrepresentation of information. They like to take specific information and twist it into a way to where it may sound logical, it may sound truthful, but they do it in a way that they serve themselves in it, in which they gain benefit from whatever it is they're trying to get. Manipulation. Narcissists are very strong in manipulation. They know how to manipulate. They use suicide. They use all sorts of things to where they get, they persuade you to stay in a relationship or become dependent upon whatever it is that they're trying to get. And it's really hard because in my second marriage, um, my wife thought I used, I was called a narcissist in my second marriage because, you know, without going into detail, she dealt with a lot of abuse from her first marriage. And her first husband was a narcissist, and the thing is if you don't fully heal from that type of emotional abuse, if you don't fully heal from that type of verbal language or anything that is from your first relationship, and you bring it into your other relationship, that is all you're going to see in your next relationship. You're going to see that person that is, attempting suicide as a way to manipulate you to stay. But that is not the case because, like I said, in my marriage, my second marriage, I was very suicidal, and that was one of the main reasons why I was medically retired from the military was suicidal ideation. That falls in with the major depressive disorder. But when I was going through those dark points in my life and I was really attempting suicide, she thought that it was an attempt to manipulate her to stay. When in all reality, within me, I got to a point where I was hopeless. I was helpless. I didn't want to deal with anything. I didn't care who it affected. I just wanted the pain to stop. And the only way the pain would stop is if I attempted suicide. And that's not the truth, just so you guys know. That is a tactic of the enemy that they used, or that the enemy uses to debilitate you and pretty much destroy you. Now bringing it back around into narcissism, narcissists, they project a persona of themselves that is not really who they are. They put on an act. Like in the beginning of a relationship, I caution anybody that starts a relationship with anyone, because a narcissist can hide it very well. After all, they've been living with it their entire life. A narcissist can push their way into a person's life by doing this whole grand gesture of, painting this picture that, this is like the best of everything. I'm kind of lacking the words for what I'm trying to say, but they basically, they tell you that, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. They're going to paint this fairy tale for you. That's the word I was looking for, fairy tale. And, I caution anybody that gets in a relationship where it seems like it's too good to be true, because sometimes when it's too good to be true, it really is too good to be true. So that's all I got to say about, when it comes to a new relationship. You really got to look at the person, and you really need to dig down deep into the person and notice the routines, notice the things about them that, if they do seem off, start to look at those things. You get any kind of red flags, anything like that, you want to open your eyes and really get into that and just dig in and find out, if your red flags are actually true or not, or if it's just your own trauma that you've gone through, that you have developed this type of fear in a way that affects every relationship you're in. So, I just caution anybody that starts a relationship with anyone, you got to protect yourself, because ultimately, if you're not happy, all you're doing is really serving somebody else, and you become miserable, and that's not a healthy relationship. A narcissist, they typically need admiration to sustain them. What does that mean? What they need that person in their relationship to admire them, to basically look up to them as the person that's always in charge, the person that is the only one that can help them. They make you very dependent on them, and you really need to look out for people who desire admiration, people who desire, you know, things who are, you know, things from you that are typically not of natural nature, if that makes sense. Um, and, you know, moving into the more, it's not really physical. It really, you know, it can be anything when it comes to battering. Um, Battering is a way a narcissist uses to level the playing field. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that they use battering as a way to shift the power and control of the relationship. You know, what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. It's the way for them to feel on top and superior. And, you know, in a relationship with the narcissist has to be in control. The narcissist has to be the one in charge of everything. Has to do this, has to do that, and you know it, it's very damaging. As I said, you know, my marriage that I'm currently in, well, my wife, who I'm separated from right now, you know, she dealt with that for years, and I mean years and years, that she dealt with that, and you know, that's one of those things that you can't expect someone to get through overnight, let alone get through in a year or two. So when it comes to, you know, that type of relationship to where your spouse or your partner has been in a relationship where they've been abused, all I got to say is you need to offer them a ton of grace. A ton of grace and unconditional love, because unconditional love will counter whatever lies that they've been fed for the years they've been abused. The grace will counter all the lies that they've been fed, you know, again, in the years of the abuse that they've been in. And, you know, if you were the victim in an abusive relationship, just remember that the abuser did what they did to try to gain control of you. And what you got going on, you know, is so much more than the abuser has to say about you. You know, once the relationship ends with an abuser, it's pretty messy. What usually happens is the abuser, you know, tries to gain control, gets very sloppy in things, and their whole world begins to fall apart. You know, this whole world, this whole fake world that they created, and it begins to just fall apart. And you know, you really need to look at how you were treated and the things that you were treated in your last relationship, and actually take an account for where you're at right now. I know, you know, some of my viewers are separated or just been through a divorce. You know, looking for somebody else right now, if you're still dealing with some of that trauma, is probably not a good thing. You need to make sure you're healed 100% before you start any type of relationship with anybody. What I recommend is just going out, having fun, going with friends, just doing things other than that you did when you were in your relationship. You know, getting back to know who you are initially, because knowing who you are, that, I mean, once you know who you are, you thrive. And you know, that's one of the things that I've dealt with for so long. And even in my second marriage, I dealt with it my first marriage. You know, my first marriage, I was in an abusive relationship. I was verbally, I was emotionally, I was physically abused in my first marriage. And you know, I believe I jumped into my second marriage too soon. You know, it can be that way. And all I do is caution you to jump in a relationship too soon, you know, before you're healed, before, you know, you're at a point to where you can comfortably recognize whether someone is a good person or not. Because usually, you know, when you jump in a relationship with a bad person, you know, you refuse to see all the bad stuff because it's not the other person. You know, it's not the relationship you were just in, it's something new. So I just caution you when it comes to starting a new relationship to actually, you know, take into account of getting yourself healed and getting yourself to a point to where you can actually give 100% of yourself to that next relationship. Um, the next type of abuse I want to talk about, I'm not sure if this is relevant for anybody or not, and if it is, I pray that it does help you. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is very real. It's more commonly known that a man will sexually abuse a woman, but a woman can sexually abuse a man as well. Anything with sexual abuse is it falls in line with assault. However, the difference is how they touch you. Like any unwanted touching, kissing, or rough type of behavior, rape, refusal to use refusal to use condoms, or restricting somebody's access to birth control. Um, it can, yeah. So anything non-consensual, pressuring someone into the act. I mean, just constantly pushing that person to the point to where they finally give in. Don't push somebody to the point to finally give in, because that's a form of sexual abuse. Or just simple, like even in a workplace, simple sexual insults or sexual innuendos can be considered sexual abuse. So I just caution, anybody who works with a lot of people, or is in a social setting, guard your tongue, guard your mouth, and just be careful what you say, because you do not know what that person that you're talking to has been through in their life. I guarantee you meet someone off the street, they're not going to open up to you right off the bat, and I wouldn't expect anybody to do that to me. I mean, I do it mainly because I have been dealing with it for so long. I'm very comfortable with what I have to talk about. And, some people, they take it and they go with it, and, I make really good friends. And some people may be like, whoa, that's too much information. I don't want to hear it. And they may not be ready to really understand, their own stuff. So I just, caution you on when you start a conversation to limit what you give as far as information. Just to help guard yourself and help guard the other person, so that way they don't know too much about you, that or too much that you don't want them to know. Another form of abuse is financial abuse. How is financial abuse an abuse? Well, it's usually coupled with emotional or physical abuse. One of the ways that financial abuse happens is you are not in control of anything financial, or your partner or your spouse has removed money from your account. Just remember, there are many organizations. If you decide to end the relationship, there are many organizations to help you get back on your feet. There's loans. I don't recommend doing loans, because loans can put you in a financial bind later on down the road. But I do recommend searching for nonprofit organizations who raise funds to give as grants, to give as special, one-time things to help you get back on your feet. They, buy groceries. They could buy, they can help pay rent. There's a number of organizations out there. And if you're a veteran, you have about 5 times as much. So I suggest you check, checking out different organizations if you are on the beginning stages of ending a relationship and trying to get out of abuser's life. Check into organizations. Like I said, I don't recommend doing a loan, because the loans can hurt you. Loans can hurt you in the long run. But you got to do what you got to do to get away from that abuser. And I have mad respect for anybody who gets away from an abuser, because it takes a lot to get up and get out of that relationship. Another one I want to talk about, it's the second to the last one I want to talk about, is digital abuse. I'm going to go really quick because I got about 5 minutes left. But I'm going to take, a question or two if you guys want to ask me a question as well. Social media, unwanted pictures, like people sending pictures through messages, that's considered digital abuse. What I recommend, if any kind of negative or threatening emails that you get, anything like that, keep record of it. Pictures, messages, all that stuff. This all actually falls in line with the last topic, which is stalking. But if a person uses GPS or spyware to keep tabs on you, that is digital abuse. Looking through your phone, going through pictures, text, emails, all sorts of stuff without your permission, that's considered digital abuse. No person has a right to search your personal things, no matter who they are in the relationship. You know, everything in a relationship should be consensual, but if it's not, it's considered abuse. So last one I want to talk about is stalking. When you're stalked, typically you feel stressed, you know, build anxiety, stuff like that. Make you feel vulnerable, may have trouble sleeping or concentrating at work or school. You know, when I did my research on stalking, I was, you know, astounded of how many people actually get stalked a year in the United States. And the number was 3.4 million people are stalked a year in the United States, you know, men and women. That's just the U.S. alone. So, you know, that to me is showing that, you know, there's a problem somewhere that we really need to look at. You know, if you are in immediate danger, like you feel like someone is stalking you or anything like that, call 911. I recommend you call 911, file a report, do something like that. If you're not in immediate danger, call the non-emergency line, because we don't want to tie up the, you know, emergency line if something is just you know, really not a big deal. But you do need to call 911 if you're in immediate danger. Chances are the stalker will be someone that you know. It's very rare that it could be a stranger, but it could happen. Like I said, you know, with digital abuse, you know, make sure you save all the text, voicemails, videos, letters, photos, cards, unwanted items, and also social media friend requests and emails, because social media is actually one of the bigger things where people are stalking on. It's really easy to do. You know, you got to check your privacy settings. You got to check, you know, all the information that you have on your social media and make sure it's private from an outside source. Like what I do, I put it on privacy. That, you know, you can only see my picture, you can only see my name, you can see, you know, posts that I've done, like very general posts that I posted a long time ago. You know, you really can't see any pertinent information or anything like that. I try to guard myself in a way that, you know, I protect myself from anybody who is a potential threat. And that's just not the military part of me saying that. It's, you know, that's also the person within me that is desiring someone to spend the rest of my life with. And you know, when it comes to abuse, you know, I'm a strong advocate when it comes to fighting abuse. The reason why is because, you know, I was abused as a kid. I was abused in my relationships. I was abused in high school. I was abused, you know, you name it, the type of abuse, I've been through it. And, you know, that's why I'm here talking to you all right now, is because, you know, I've been through it all. I've been through all the way from physical to emotional to sexual to financial to digital to stalking to everything. I've been through it all, so I understand. If you have any questions that you need to ask or anything like that, feel free to message me on the ones below, g.o.b.official on Instagram and on Twitter at Rewired the Show. I will get to you as soon as I can, but I will definitely answer your questions that you have. Any questions that you have, I'll take the time. I know some of my listeners and some of my people have messaged me on Instagram that I've gotten back to. And, you know, I want to let you guys know that it's okay. I may not get back to you in that day, but I will get back to you. I promise you that. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, I'll go ahead and take, you know, a question or two. I got about 1 minute left. I'll be glad to help you out any way I can. And, you know, like I said, you know, with relationships, you just got to be very careful. You got to guard yourself. You know, take your time in a relationship. It's when you jump into a relationship that where things start really affecting the person, really affecting each other. If nobody's got any questions, that's all I have for tonight. And I appreciate you coming in. Rewire the Show. I am Garrett O'Brien, your host, and we'll see you all next week.